The fluorescent hum of Denver International Airport beat down on my shoulders, heavy as the grief I was carrying. DIA. Always a zoo. Families wrangling screaming toddlers, business types glued to their glowing screens, that endless tide of rolling suitcases. The soundtrack of modern travel. I was Colonel Elijah Eli Johnson, and airports were just another battlefield in my life, another checkpoint. Dress shoes clicked on the polished tile, a familiar rhythm against the airport's chaotic pulse, too damn familiar. But today felt different. The weight on my chest wasn't just the medals pinned to my uniform, the weight of years and battles fought. It was the weight of him. Waiting out on that tarmac, in the belly of a plane, draped in old glory. Private First Class Jamal Washington, 21 years old. Just a kid. Gone. Stolen. I adjusted my garrison cap, the brim casting a shadow over my eyes, and sucked in a breath. Duty. That's what this was. A promise. A sacred oath made to every soldier who'd shipped out. Every soul who'd never see home again. No one gets left behind. It wasn't about rank, wasn't about glory. It was about Jamal. I walked to the Delta counter, the Delta logo a stark blue against the sterile white. Pulled out my orders, crisp and official, and my military ID. Slipped them under the plexiglass to the agent. Sarah Miller, her name tag read. Didn't even look up, just tapped at her keyboard, face tight with that customer service mask they all wore. Typed, frowned. Then finally, her eyes flickered up. Sir? A beat too long. A hesitation that prickled my senses. Sir, could I see that again? Voice tight, like her uniform collar was suddenly too small. I slid the papers back. Watched. Her. Saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the darting glance to her coworker, the subtle shift in her posture, like she'd stumbled into something she hadn't signed up for in customer service training. She leaned in, whispered to another agent, a guy with tired eyes and a loosened tie. He glanced over, expression blank, unreadable. The air thickened, familiar. This feeling, I'd felt it before. That bureaucratic wall going up, cold and indifferent. Sarah turned back, a smile plastered on her face, tight and fake as a $3 bill. I'm so sorry, sir, but there seems to be an issue with your ticket. We can't allow you to board at this time. My breath hissed out between my teeth. Combat zones, hostile fire, political wrangling, backroom deals. I'd navigated it, all. But this felt different. Wrong. I'm escorting the remains of a fallen soldier, I said, voice even, controlled. Tapped the paperwork. Everything is in order. Sarah's eyes skittered away, wouldn't meet mine. I understand, sir, but there's a security protocol in place and we can't override it. Security protocol? Yes, sir, she repeated, the fake smile stretching thinner. Just policy. I stood my ground. Didn't flinch. Didn't move. Policy? What policy? Behind me, the line was backing up, people shifting, murmuring. Felt their eyes on me, curious, impatient. But I wasn't stepping aside. Not this time. Shoulders squared. I planted my feet. I wasn't going anywhere without answers. But the Delta staff, they were digging in too. The air around that counter, it went thick, heavy. Conversations in line died down. A uniformed colonel being denied his flight. That wasn't your everyday airport drama. I kept my voice steady, calm. Ma'am, I need to understand exactly what the issue is. This is a military assignment, not a damn vacation. My documentation is valid. Sarah hesitated again, eyes darting to the small huddle of Delta staff near the back, whispering, heads bent close. A supervisor. Mr. Henderson, his name tag declared. A man in his late 50s, face etched with weariness, stepped forward, adjusted his tie, folded his arms, and gave me that practiced corporate stare. Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience, he began, voice smooth, laced with that professional tone that meant shut up and go away. But we have certain policies in place, and unfortunately we can't override them at this time. Policies. That damn word again. I inhaled slow, deliberate. I'd heard this script before, just in different uniforms, different languages, different battlefields. I've flown with military escorts before, I said, keeping the frustration buried under years of discipline. I know the procedure, and I know there's no policy stopping me from boarding. So, let's be honest. What's the real reason? I'm being denied? Henderson cleared his throat, shifted his weight. It's just an extra security measure. Nothing personal, sir. Nothing personal. Rich. My jaw tightened, but I kept the anger leashed. Too many rooms, too many lies hidden behind vague security concerns. They were testing me, waiting for me to blow my stack, give them an excuse to call airport security. Not gonna happen. The people in line, they were watching now. A woman in a red blazer whispered to her husband, brows furrowed. A young dude with a backwards baseball cap and a boarding pass frowned, glancing between me and the Delta employees, trying to piece together the puzzle. Then a voice cut through the tension. "Sir, you got an issue with his military clearance?" I turned my head slightly. A man a few spots back in line had spoken up. Older guy, maybe mid-60s, weathered face, a USMC hat pulled low over his eyes. Marine, a brother. Henderson's practiced smile faltered. "No, sir. This isn't about clearance. We just have to follow standard protocol." The Marine let out a sharp snort. "Protocol? Hell, I've been through airport security 1,000 times. Never seen protocol stop a soldier from escorting. One of our own home." He folded his arms, stared Henderson down. "So what is it?" More murmurs rippled through the line. Phones started coming out. The air crackled. The Delta staff. They felt it too. Sarah, the agent, she stole a glance at Henderson, looking unsure. Scared, maybe. Henderson sighed, rubbed a hand over his temple, looked back at me, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. "Let me check something," he muttered, and disappeared into the back office. Sarah at the counter kept her eyes down, suddenly fascinated by her computer screen. I didn't move. Stood tall, shoulders square, staring straight ahead. I wasn't going anywhere, and neither was this story. The murmur in the terminal, it wasn't just background noise anymore. It was focused, charged. People in line weren't just waiting for their flights. They were watching, recording. The Marine, he wasn't the only one looking pissed. A middle-aged woman in a denim jacket, clutching her purse, shook her head, leaned to her husband. "This isn't right," she muttered, voice low but carrying. "He's in uniform." The young guy with the baseball cap, he was on his phone, thumbs flying. People were noticing, and that was dangerous for Delta. I kept my face neutral, granite, but inside I was taking it all in. Henderson hadn't come back yet, which meant one of two things. Either he was scrambling for a BS excuse, or he was hoping this would just fade away. Neither was gonna happen. Then a voice from behind me. "Excuse me, sir?" I turned my head slightly. A young woman no older than 25 stood a few feet away, phone in hand. Eyes uncertain but determined. I don't mean to intrude, but I just want to make sure I understand. They're not letting you board?" Her voice wasn't loud, but the way she said it, slow, deliberate, made everyone nearby lean in closer. I exhaled, glanced at Sarah behind the counter. "That's correct." The young woman blinked, like she'd expected a different answer. Hesitated a beat, then nodded once, sharp. Turned her phone screen towards me. "I'm live right now," she said, voice steady now. "People need to see this." And just like that, the dam broke. Another man held up his phone. "This is wrong," he said, shaking his head. "This man is literally escorting a fallen soldier." A woman further back raised her voice, clear and strong. "Hey, excuse me, can someone explain why he's being denied?" A few people shifted uncomfortably, unsure if they should get involved. But the energy in the room had shifted. What started as quiet murmurs had grown into something bigger, something Delta couldn't ignore. Sarah behind the counter looked like she wanted to disappear into the linoleum. Hands frozen over the keyboard, eyes darting to the phone lenses pointed her way. Then the Marine from earlier, he stepped forward again. Done playing nice. "I've seen a lot of things in my time," he said, voice low, steady, firm. "But I never thought I'd see the day when an American soldier, especially one escorting the remains of a brother in arms, was treated like this." The terminal went eerily quiet. Even the usual airport announcements over the loudspeakers seemed distant, muted. The only sound was the soft beep of phones recording every second. The Marine squared his shoulders. "This is a disgrace." Sarah swallowed hard. Fingers trembled as she clicked at her keyboard again. Henderson still MIA. Passengers whispered. A baby fussed in a stroller, but the mother, instead of soothing the child, was staring at her phone, reading something, face twisting with disgust. Then, from somewhere in the back of the line, a man muttered, "It's already trending." I didn't move, didn't need to. The world was watching now. The tension in the terminal, thick enough to choke on. Henderson still gone. Delta staff frozen in awkward silence. Phones out, recording, tweeting, streaming. Then, like a match to dry tinder, it spread. The young dude with the baseball cap, still glued to his phone, let out a low whistle. Damn, this is everywhere now. I didn't react. Too early to celebrate. But from the way Sarah behind the counter stiffened, I knew she felt it too. The woman in the denim jacket checked her phone, gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered to her husband. "It's already on Facebook." The older Marine grunted, pulling out his own phone. They don't even know what kind of storm they just started. Then, as if on cue, the airport loudspeaker crackled to life. "Attention passengers. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Flight 237 to Phoenix will be delayed. We apologize for any inconvenience." A few groans rippled through the crowd, but most people weren't even paying attention. Their focus was here, on the uniformed soldier being denied his flight, carrying out his duty. A minute later, the young woman near the windows gasped. "He's on Twitter," turned her screen to the crowd. People leaned in. A tweet in bold caps. "Delta just denied a black U.S. Army colonel his flight while escorting a fallen soldier's remains. This is how we treat our heroes? Let him fly." Underneath, the numbers were climbing. Retweets, comments, likes, catching fire. Then another tweet popped up. This one from a veteran advocacy group. "We are aware of the disgraceful incident happening at Denver Airport. Our soldiers deserve better. Expect action. Delta Airlines." The crowd murmured, the realization sinking in. Delta had officially lost control of the narrative. Sarah behind the counter, still frozen, let out a shaky breath, turned and hurried towards the back, disappearing behind a frosted glass door. Not coming back with an answer. Coming back with damage control. I adjusted my cap. Been in situations like this before. Not at an airport, not like this. But in places where powerful people suddenly realized they'd messed with the wrong damn people. I wasn't smiling, wasn't gloating, because at the end of the day, this wasn't about me. It was about Private First Class Jamal Washington, the young man waiting to go home. And right now, that mission was still incomplete. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore. They were waiting. The terminal felt different now. Charged, expectant. Then Henderson finally returned, but he wasn't alone. A second man walked beside him. Navy suit, sleek and expensive, Delta ID clipped neatly to his pocket. Walk brisk, controlled. Someone used to putting out fires. He stopped just short of the counter, eyes scanning the scene, darted between me, the Marine, the rows of phones still recording, cleared his throat. "Colonel," he said, voice smooth, practiced, but with an edge of urgency. "I apologize for the miscommunication. There seems to have been an error with our system, but we're working to get you on your flight as soon as possible." Miscommunication. I'd been in the military long enough to translate corporate speak. Miscommunication meant we got caught. Meant fix this before it bleeds us dry. I didn't respond right away. Let the silence hang. Watch the Delta rep shift uncomfortably. I see, I finally said, voice measured. An error, you said? Yes, sir. A regrettable mistake. We assure you it was not intentional. A few people in the crowd scoffed. The Marine shook his head, a low rumble in his chest. The Delta rep adjusted his tie, clearly sweating now. We'd like to personally escort you to the gate now, Colonel. First-class accommodations, of course. First class, as if that was the point. I looked past him, to the counter where Sarah still stood, looking anywhere but at me. The same. Agent who'd smiled that stiff fake smile when she denied my flight. The same one who hadn't bothered to check, to think, before saying no. I exhaled slow. I appreciate the urgency, I said. But I need to clarify something. The rep nodded quickly. Of course, Colonel. My voice remained even, controlled. If no one recorded this, if no one spoke up, would I still be standing here? A beat of silence. The rep swallowed. Sir, you don't need to answer. I cut him off. I already knew. Everyone in the terminal knew. Another moment of silence. Then a woman in the crowd murmured, He's right. The rep tried to smooth it over again. Sir, we sincerely apologize. We both know this isn't about an apology, I said, voice still level. It's about accountability. The crowd murmured in agreement. People weren't just angry anymore. They were disappointed, betrayed maybe. The rep knew he was losing control. Straightened his posture, tried for a more authoritative tone. Colonel, let's get you on your flight now. But before I could respond, a new voice cut in. Sir? A younger man in an airport security uniform had appeared, at the side of the counter, held out a phone to the Delta rep. Expression tight. I think you should see this. The rep frowned, took the phone, scrolled, face paled. The Marine crossed his arms, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. Something wrong? The rep didn't answer. Didn't need to. I already knew. The backlash had exploded beyond the airport. Major news outlet. Headline blunt. U.S. Army colonel denied flight while escorting fallen soldier. Delta Airlines scrambles for answers. Below it, a video clip played. Footage from this terminal. The rep handed the phone back, inhaled sharply, turned to me. We deeply regret this situation. Voice thinner now, forced. We'd like to issue a public statement clarifying. I cut him off again. The public already knows the truth. Silence. The rep pressed his lips together, tight white. Line. I looked at the crowd, at the phone still recording, turned back to the rep. I don't need first class. I don't need special treatment. I need respect. And so does the soldier I'm escorting. Another murmur ran through the crowd. The rep gave a stiff nod, like that was all he could manage now. Understood, sir. The Marine let out a small approving grunt. I adjusted my cap. Now let's finish this mission. But for Delta, the consequences were just beginning. They'd lost control. The story was out, spreading faster than they could spin it. The terminal felt more like a press conference now. Phones still rolling, passengers still watching. Then something unexpected happened. A man in a dark blue suit, posture sharp, unmistakable air of authority, walked into the scene. Not Delta, not airport security, military. The room shifted. People moved aside instinctively as he approached. His ID badge flashed briefly as he stepped up to me, extended his hand. Colonel, he said, voice firm, commanding. Major Reynolds, Department of the Army. We've been informed of the situation. I shook his hand, grip strong. Didn't need to ask how he'd gotten here so fast. The military doesn't play games when it comes to its own. Reynolds turned to the Delta rep, voice crisp, no nonsense. We are handling this now. Colonel Johnson and the remains of Private First Class Washington will not be flying commercial. The rep blinked. Sir, you were just about to cover your tracks, Reynolds interrupted, tone polite but steel-edged. He glanced at me. Sir, the Pentagon has arranged for a private military flight. Your transport is waiting. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Exchanged glances. The U.S. military had stepped in. I exhaled. Not relief. I didn't need saving. But because this mission, it was finally back on course. Gave a small nod. Understood, Major. Reynolds's gaze flicked back to the Delta rep. One last time. This will be addressed. Not a threat. A promise. I turned back to the Marine who'd watched the whole exchange, satisfaction etched on his face. Appreciate you, brother, I said. The Marine tipped his head. We look out for our own. I gave the room one last glance. The people who'd spoken up, who'd refused to let this slide, who'd made sure this story was heard. Adjusted my uniform, squared my shoulders, and walked out. Not towards the Delta gate, towards something bigger, but for Delta Airlines. The fallout was just getting started. They thought it would fade. A few apologies, a press release, maybe a CEO statement, damage control. But the public wasn't letting it go. News networks picked it up. Veterans organizations released scathing statements. Politicians weighed in, demanding accountability. Then came the financial hit. By the end of the week, Delta stock had plummeted. A trending hashtag calling for a boycott gained traction. Customers flooded their social media with demands for answers. And then the final blow, a lawsuit. A coalition of military advocacy groups filed a formal complaint against Delta for discrimination and failure to uphold service member protections. Under pressure, the Delta CEO made a public appearance, sweating under the harsh lights. Called it a regrettable misunderstanding. Announced the employees involved had been placed on administrative leave. Too little, too damn late. Meanwhile, Colonel Elijah Johnson continued his mission. Escorted Private First Class Jamal Washington home. Stood by, silent as the young soldier's family received him for the last time. I didn't need the headlines, didn't need the attention. I needed respect, and that was the real fight. Respect shouldn't be conditional, shouldn't require a viral video, public outrage. It should be the damn standard. The people at that airport, the Marine, the young woman, the passengers who spoke up, who refused to stay silent, they proved something important. When people stand together, injustice has nowhere to hide. If you believe in accountability, if you believe in honoring those who serve, let your voice be heard. Because silence lets things like this happen again. And next time, it might not go viral.